That girl's nasty.
Coming up this weekend, in a bout that was originally scheduled for UFC Fight Night, Rafael versus Rafael, we have Nina Nunes taking on that girl's nasty, Cynthia Calvillo. And Matt, we talked about this fight, what was it, a month ago, a couple of months ago?
Yeah.
It seems like it was a little bit ago, but originally it was due July 9th, and Nina Nunes out of that bout. There was some rumblings of a stomach virus, so now it gets booked in August, and it gets booked for California. So it should be an interesting matchup. Obviously, for Cynthia Calvillo, large majority of her career has been spent training, living in California. A little bit of a stint at Extreme Couture. For Nina Nunes, Champ Camp with the Lioness. She's back. She's got the belt. And for Nina, looking to make some moves at flyweight now. So we talked about this fight early July. We're going to throw it back to that original prediction. We're going to update the odds and give you a final pick on this pairing. We have a fight at flyweight, yes, flyweight, between former ranked strawweights. It's Nina Nunes, formerly Ansarov, taking on Cynthia Calvillo. And yes, that girl was nasty when she was on her way up, and she was 9-1-1 at one point. And now the record is 9-4-1.
She beat Pearl Gonzalez.
Yeah, and she did
Trailblazer
very well. That was that girl's nasty soundbite. That's what that fight was. But if you look at it in her last three fights, a loss to Caitlin Chukagian, she couldn't get it going. A loss to Jessica Andrade by finish. And then a couple of months after that, she fought Andrea Lee and got retired on the stool at the end of the second round. So for Cynthia Calvillo, maybe you think her best days are behind her. She's a few days away from her 35th birthday, so happy early birthday to Cynthia Calvillo. She's going to be taking on Nina Nunes, who's almost 37 years old and hasn't won a fight in 3.5 years when she beat Claudia Gadelha. Before that, I went over Randa Marcos. Before that, I went over Angela Hill. And if you do look at it, the loss that Nina Nunes had before she went away, had the kid, then made the comeback against Mackenzie Dern that did not go all that well, but it was way too soon, was a fight against Tatiana Suarez where she lost the first round convincingly, lost the second round convincingly, won the third round. She came back in that one. So a good sign from Nina Nunes. You like that resolve. But in this fight, Matt, if somebody says, hey, like that kid from Recess, Russell, was it Russell? Opens his jacket and he's got all these wares for sale, and the person goes, hey, I'm going to tell you who's going to win. I know exactly. Cynthia Calvillo, Nina Nunes. We each went 10-1 last weekend, and I have no fucking clue who's going to win this fight this weekend.
It's not a good fight. Let's just call it what it is. Cynthia Calvillo's quit in 2 straight fights pretty much, and Nina Nunes hasn't looked good in a meaningful period of time. Like, for Nunes, it's not even her fault completely, because she fought Tatiana Suarez, who at one point was like Zion Williamson, almost too good for her own good, and her body failed her because she was so talented. It's kind of wild. Like, Jacob deGrom is probably the best comp for Tatiana Suarez. Like, he's such a good pitcher, his body can't withstand how good he is.
To me, it's like Sean Alexander, the lost star of the Seattle Seahawks in the early 2000s.
I don't know who that is, but okay. For Nina Nunes, she could look really good. And again, on her best day, we know how talented of a fighter that she is. But after she had her kid, and the fact that she is 36 years old, she's had a pretty long career too. That's the wild thing about both these fighters. Just look at it on Tapology, it like reminded me, oh yeah, Cynthia Calvillo is almost 35 years old because she was very young in her career and she was pushed quite heavily at the beginning. Because I remember there was a stat that came out. She fought at UFC 209 and then 210. She was the first fighter since Tito Ortiz to fight on back-to-back pay-per-views since it was like 18 years or whatever. It was a wild turnaround that she had between those two cards. And then it just never really worked out for her. I remember the Carla Esparza fight was considered very controversial at the time, but I really did think Carla had done enough with her own offensive grappling to stifle the attack of Cynthia Calvillo. And ever since we've seen that if Calvillo can't get her own offensive takedown, she really does struggle on the feet against pressure fighters. And you might look at her win over Jessica Eye and say, oh, well, Jessica Eye is a pressure fighter. But Jessica Eye was never really in that fight. And she wasn't dedicated to that game plan of, hey, I'm going to get on the inside and really make my opponent pay for their kind of range misuse. Excuse me. Calvillo looked great in that performance, but the problem was, it's almost like she got the big opportunity and then she felt like she had won after that. Like, for me, Calvillo, when beating Jessica Eye, seemed like when teams make a big deal when they win in like the second round of the playoffs. It's good. It's a good building block. But to quote Kobe Bryant, work's not done yet. And for Cynthia Calvillo, I don't know if we've really seen the improvements after she was able to win that one big opportunity.
I don't know if we've seen anything different all the way through. That's the trouble for me. I mean, Cynthia Calvillo's trained at AKA, and that was a big deal. She trained at Team Alpha Male. That was a big deal. Then when she left there, she went to Extreme Couture. That was made a big deal of. Well, now she's a Syndicate MMA. Like, it has been mixing, moving, but we haven't really seen giant leaps and bounds of growth in her game. So you look at the fight against Katlyn Chookagian, and I say, okay, well, that's the perennial number one contender in this division. When you have a win over Jessica Eye, who at the time, if I'm not mistaken, was the 5th ranked flyweight, that's a good win. Like, that's a good win to have on your record. But she wasn't ready for Chookagian. Then when she went out there against Andrade, she wasn't ready for that. And then between the Andrade fight and the fight against Andrea Lee, there was a 2-month gap. That's way too soon. So she came back against Andrea Lee, couldn't get any of her own takedowns, and she was a sitting duck on the feet. So that is the trouble when you look at this fight. Nina Nunes has good takedown defense. Obviously, we talked about it. Tatiana Suarez took her down round 1, round 2. Some fighters have taken her down, sure. But when you look at Nunes, historically good in her takedown defense and very good when she makes her strikes count on the feet. That's the way that Nunes could win this fight. If Calvillo can't get the takedown, Nunes has been historically the better striker.
No, you're 100% right, and on paper, I would agree with that 100%. I just don't know what version of Nunes we're going to get, and I don't know what version of Calvillo we're going to get either, because there is a clear path of, okay, Calvillo gets on top, submits her in the first round, and wow, Cynthia looks great. There's also another world where Nina Nunes just defends 7 takedowns, boxes her ears in, and wins like a 30-26 because the third round is so one-sided. The one big X factor I do think for both fighters, though, is the fact that Nunes has far better cardio than Cynthia Calvillo. Even though Calvillo has had that 5-round experience at the UFC level, I don't think she can manage her own output and her cardio to the level that a Nina Nunes can, because as long as Nunes is in a 15-minute fight, she can just keep on throwing and not really have to worry about, taking a minute or two off throughout the fight. So I do think Nunes, if she can keep this fight on the feet, is going to have a massive advantage, because for Calvillo, Andrea Lee's not the hardest puncher in the world. And this is why, when Amanda Nunes tapped out so fast against Juliana Pena, I was kind of hard on her because she got tired, got into a hard fight, and then kind of gave up the second she was in a hard fight. The reason I think the world of Alexander Volkanovski is, he gets into a hard fight, says, that's cool and all. I'm a champion. This is why I'm built from this stuff. For Calvillo, it's just so disheartening when you see an MMA fighter, or a fighter in general, who's kind of built up on these principles to look for an easy way out in her last fight.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole conversation around Charles Oliveira. Now he's your lightweight champ.
The difference is, though, Charles Oliveira went on a 7-fight win streak and finished everybody.
And this could very well be the start. So, in the rebooking, Cynthia Calvillo open a -140 favorite, -160 right now, and consequently for Nina Nunes opened at a +120, +135 or thereabouts. We have a look at the Topology votes, Matt. The most slipped as I was on this page, so it's not as much a surprise to us as it is to you, but we'll throw it on over there nonetheless. 610 total votes, 70% Calvillo, 89% by decision for the 30% that have Nunes, 92% by decision. So majority of the fans have both fighters, I guess, to win by decision. Majority have Calvillo to get the win. When we made this original prediction video, we were in agreement on the pick, if I'm not mistaken, both going with Calvillo. Any change of the pick? Any differing of the thoughts?
This is a very tough fight to predict, I'm not going to lie, because let's be honest, neither fighters look great as of late, so it is really difficult to figure out, okay, where are they going to start from, and what version of each fighter are we going to get? Because for Nunes, she looked great in that fight against Tatiana Suarez, and I understand a lot of you guys right now are going, who the hell is Tatiana Suarez? But,
or how the hell did she look good? Third round, she looked great.
I bet you people don't even know who Suarez is at this stage of her career, for being honest.
If they watch Food Truck Diaries, they do.
So nobody knows who Tatiana Suarez is. Probably the best fighter to ever fight in this division, to never even fight for a title. One of the most dominant wrestlers we have ever seen in the women's strawweight division. I know this fight's a flyweight, but still, humor me for a second. Tatiana Suarez was that kind of a fighter at strawweight. And Nina Nunes, Nina... Well, I don't even remember.
Ansaroff at the time.
Thank you. Looked really good in that fight, and understandably she lost. She lost the first 2 rounds, but she was able to rally in that 3rd round. That's the one good thing about Nina Nunes. I'm never really worried about where her gas tank is going to be, because for the most part, she always just kind of fights like a different shade of herself, and that's something I appreciate. Whereas, I think Calvillo probably has the higher ceiling of both these fighters, but the problem is, I have no idea where she is in her MMA career at this point. At one point, she was one of the big stars, the turn of the century, if you will. After UFC 200, there weren't a lot of female stars in the UFC. There was Amanda Nunes, who had just beat the brakes off Ronda Rousey. Ronda was kind of in limbo. Holly Holm was out there, but we all kind of know how her career went after she lost the title. She had quite a few losses, so a lot of people put stock into Cynthia Calvillo, myself included, but when she did make her weight change up to flyweight, the results definitely were not what she was expecting. I feel very easy to say that. So ever so slightly, I'm still going to stay with the Cynthia Calvillo pick because I liked it the first time around. Nina Nunes, the one who has more question marks of anything going into this fight. But I think this is as tough of a fight as any on the card to predict because, again, I have no idea where either one of these fighters are in their overall MMA careers.
Both fighters are, aging. They're on their Augusto Sakai. They both have losing streaks. Like, it really is a tricky one. I like all the parts of Calvillo's game when it comes to the wrestling, the grappling. When it comes to Nina Nunes, obviously much pure striker.
Oh, yeah.
We know this. We've seen this. There's
Good
a long
volume.
history of it. But when we go back to both of these fighters and we look at the wins for Nunes, her last win 3.5 years ago for Cynthia Calvillo, who from the original booking to now, turned 35, she won against Jessica Ai 2 years ago. So both of us going with Calvillo in this matchup. Let us know down below in the comments section. Do you have the champ camp? Do you have Calvillo? It's going to be a fun one. Big strawweight matchup this weekend. Angela Hill taking on Lupita Godinez. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say,
Let's get into it.